Well, how are you doing? Okay, this is going to be something I don't normally like to do, which is a response video. I don't like response videos with our opposition people because they never go anywhere. They never take any notice of them, and they seem to just look straight past whatever you say. I don't see the point of even giving a response video, to be honest with you. Uh, this time, most of the time, this time I will make an exception because it's on the topic of parallel and diverging zeniths. So this is actually a very, very important topic because parallel zeniths only work on a flat plane and diverging zeniths only work on a globe arc, right, or a sphere, let's just say, right. Now, this guy here, his name is Petey or Peter. I'll put his video that he made responding to my last video, and I'll put that as well into the description. I'm not going to play much of his video. I'm going to keep it very short, just a bit he plays, and I'm going to go through what he was claiming within it. I'm going to try and get this started. I don't want it to go on too long, but I'm going to correct basically the things he's getting wrong. I've corrected this man several times, and he's only making videos recently. But I've corrected him several times. I even had to correct him on his own globe claim. He didn't even know what that was. He was getting that wrong. Him and another man called Hoymar, both of them got it wrong. Like I literally know his own model better than him. This is sad, but that's where we're at. Not that I ever wanted to know it, but I had to because of what I do. So I'm going to go through this, correct them on a few important points. Anyone can come watch the video, make what they want out of it. His video, I don't care. I, this man has not, like the rest of our opposition, has not learned about celestial navigation, the basics of what the terms mean, what they are, all the basic stuff, how it works. He doesn't understand it. So I'm just going to get stuck into it. That's the easiest way to go about it now. Okay, hopefully you can hear this. I'm going to play the first minute or so of his video. I'm going to stop it then and correct on a few things.
Video called 60 flat nautical miles per degree.
That's the name of my last video. Okay, this is the one he's responded to.
Here we see how zenith distance is defined, which is zenith distance equals 90 degrees minus the altitude. This is the altitude here. It's the observer's angle of elevation to the star.
Okay, that's the elevation angle, right? That's not the altitude. The altitude is up here. That's the altitude, right? It's the angle to the celestial body at whatever altitude it's at, because it's only got an apparent altitude, not an actual altitude, because we don't know what altitude it is. The stars, due to perspective, they change their apparent altitude in the sky, depending on if you're moving closer to Polaris or away from Polaris. If you're north of the equator, Polaris will change its apparent altitude, right, in relation to the horizon, right. Other stars, they will move either coming towards you or away from you, and they will be changing their apparent altitude, right. So this is an elevation angle. This is just the way it's written here, is just to show that is an angle to the star, right. That where the angle meets the star or finishes, that is where the altitude of the star is. You don't know what that is. It's apparent. It's an angular elevation, right? An angular altitude, if you want to call it that. I don't know. Angular altitude, whatever. It's not the actual altitude. We don't know the actual altitude.
The altitude angle is one of two angles that make up 90 degrees. The other is the zenith distance angle shown here. The zenith distance, despite what Brian would have you believe, is not a linear distance from the star to the observer's zenith. It's simply the complementary angle to the altitude angle, also known as the co-altitude.
No, this is completely wrong. This is labeled altitude and zenith distance, right? This is not, for a start, not called the zenith distance angle. This is called the zenith angle, right? Also known as the depression angle of the elevation angle. This is an elevation angle. This is the depression angle. This here is the roof of the depression angle, right? A depression angle has a roof, right? An elevation angle has a baseline, right? a horizontal, a baseline. A depression angle has a roof, right? Zenith angle, right? The zero zenith angle, right, will then, right, once you, let's say this angle is 45 degrees, the elevation angle is 45 degrees, then your zenith angle will be 45 degrees, and then you multiply that 45 degrees by 60, right, to get right that 45 degrees by 60. That'll give you your minutes of degree, which will then give you your nautical miles along the baseline of the Earth. Right, that's how it works. The zenith angle, right, allows you to determine the zenith distance, right, the distance between, right, the two zeniths, the observer zenith and the zenith to from the GP to the celestial body. And this here is not co-altitude. This is the co-altitude of the star, of the celestial body. Co-altitude distance, right? The co-altitude is the complement to the altitude. That's how it's defined. You can look into it, Lexico and Merriam-Webster and a few others. The complement to the altitude. Altitude of what? The altitude of the celestial body or whatever it is you're taking an angle to. But the co-altitude matches that altitude. That's why I have this purple line in. So the star is at this altitude, whatever it is, and the observer's zenith, right, is a co-altitude to the star, to the celestial body. That is your zenith distance between the two zeniths. There's a zenith comes up to here from the GP to the celestial body, and the zenith from the observer straight up. It's the distance, right, at the co-altitude point between the between the observer zenith and the zenith of from the GP of the celestial body. That's your zenith distance. This is their zenith angle, right? I'm just going to show, right? Where are we? Here, right? Let me just go down here, right? Right. Solar altitude angle. See this here? This was in my last video, right? Solar altitude angle. Then you have this other angle here. That's your zenith angle here, right? Zenith angle. Solar altitude angle. This is your elevation angle. Let's say to the sun, and then you have your zenith angle. It calls it zenith angle. See this zenith here? See that it's matching the sun, right? So you see, I put in this blue line and this purple line. This purple line here is the from the GP. This is the zenith to the celestial body, the sun or whatever, and this is the observer's zenith. And this blue line is the zenith distance, right? It's a box style system. That's how it works, right? You have a baseline here that always matches the roof of the baseline of the elevation angle will always match the roof of the depression angle, right? Always, right? Or the zenith angle. The roof of the zenith angle, right, is your zenith distance between the two zeniths. The zenith distance between this zenith and the other zenith. That's your co-altitude, right? Here, where are we? Let's go to the co-altitude, right? Co-altitude, right? There's the observer, there's the zenith, co-altitude. Observer's zenith, observer's position, zenith, co-altitude. There's the sub-point, right, of the circle of equal altitude. This would be the center point. This is the zenith distance, 1,800 nautical mile radius. See the zenith distance. See this? Zenith distance, right? This is the radius, 1,800 nautical mile radius. This is the zenith distance at the co-altitude is 1,800 minutes of degree across the sky, which become 1,800 nautical mile radius on the surface of the Earth. That's how it works. 1,800 nautical miles with a 60-degree angle, then you have a 30-degree zenith angle, which gives you 30 by 60, which gives you a zenith distance of 1,800 minutes of degree, which is 1,800 nautical miles. That's your zenith distance, 1,800 nautical miles, zenith distance. Right? It's your co-altitude distance. It's not an angle. Well, he got that completely wrong. Like, and that was, I even showed this in my last, with the same diagram, but it was here in this one. I forgot I had the other one, but I used this one. Co-altitude. Look, zenith, observer zenith, co-altitude. I showed all this in my video. The very thing is attacking, and he can't even get that much right. So I don't know what's going on with the guy, but he has things all twisted. Co-altitude, zenith, co-altitude, zenith distance. Right? See the way this matches up here, the co-altitude distance. Do you understand why that is? Because they use parallel zeniths. The very thing that my last video was about, and mostly the one before that. Their argument is parallel zeniths or diverging zeniths. Which one will give you 60 nautical miles per degree? We both know the answer to that. Something that Petey goes on about now in a moment, I think. 1 second now, I'll play again.
The zenith distance angle remains the same no matter how far away the star is. If the zenith distance worked the way that Brian suggests,
that's not right. The zenith distance, yeah, it doesn't matter what distance the star is. If the star is up here, it don't matter as long as the observer's zenith co-altitude, the co-altitude distance is matching the altitude of the celestial body. That's how it works.
That's to say, this length always equals the distance on the ground between the observer and the GP of the star.
That's right.
What's the point of drawing these unnecessary distance lines in the sky?
But, oh God, this is a diagram to show it. This is what it's about. This is a showing of what it is. This guy doesn't understand this. This is a diagram to show how it works. Right? Co-altitude. Nobody draws things across the sky. We don't have diagrams in reality outside of computers and on paper. We don't have diagrams out on the ocean. Like, come on, man.
So 1 degree equals 60 nautical miles.
Exactly. Sure does. So I'm not going to go, I'm just going to go up to here. This is the next part. But before I go here, I must do one thing. I have some diagrams that I took from here on, and I'm going to explain what he shows. Right. It's going to escape from that. Let's come down here. Back to this. Right. He asks us at one point in his video, this is important. I want this to be taken notice of, right? He says, how is it, right? How is it that 60 nautical miles per degree works on a flat plane, right? Because I know how it works on a flat plane. I've given everything, right? And how it only works, it only works on a flat earth. I've given everything necessary for anyone to figure that out themselves. I'm not going to give all the details of it. I know how it's done. I know what it is. And the reason I'm not, right, I will do in time, but the reason I'm not is this, right? Because we have a claim from our opposition side, Petey, right, and co, right, that's going on for a couple of 100 years now, that 60 nautical miles per degree matches the surface of the globe, right? Now, it does match the distance from the GP of Polaris down to the equator, and the equator onto the south, right, whatever, right? That distance does match, but that comes from a flat earth elevation angles to Polaris, right? This is the problem. This is mostly what Petey's doing, is trying to do a reversal of proof. It's basically a reversal of proof fallacy, because their claim is diverging zeniths, right? So what I need from them is to prove, using celestial navigation and diverging zeniths, how they match, right? How they match 60 nautical miles per degree with the distances they're going to get in the sky. Because the minutes of degree, right, due to the globe model having diverging zeniths, the minutes of degree will still be the minutes of degree, but those minutes will not match the surface distance between the observer and the GP. That's what I showed in my last video. They don't match, and I'll show this a little bit later as well. Those two things don't match with diverging zeniths. You can only match it with parallel zeniths. It doesn't work any other way. You can't have an angle without a flat plane. You can't have a box without a flat plane. You can't do any of this without a flat plane. So to claim diverging zeniths and then try and claim that 60 nautical miles per degree works on the surface of a sphere, it only works when it's back engineered from flat earth elevation angles to Polaris. Everything that anyone on the globe side would need, right, to investigate that claim, I've just given. Right? Now, if you're also brilliant at maths and measurements and everything else, right? That we've heard all the claims for 7 years, right? I've given you absolutely everything you need to prove your point, to prove using celestial navigation practices, right? To prove that diverging zeniths, right? Using zenith distance, right? That diverging zeniths, right? Give you an exact distance between the observer and the GP. Because your minutes of degree, right? If you get 2,700, if you get a 45, if you use a 40, if you take an angle of 45 degrees off of your observer zenith on a globe, right? That up 45 degrees if you're going to Polaris. Polaris is 434 light years away in your belief. Light years don't exist. Speed of light was never measured. But that's a separate point. In your belief, it's 434 light years away. So that means your diverging zenith, your zenith, the observer zenith, has to match that. The co-altitude has to match co-altitude. So if this is Polaris and this zenith is 402 Polaris, is 434 light years away from the surface of your globe. This is not globe, obviously it's flat. But then the observers here, right? The observer's zenith has to match the co-altitude of that. So the observer's zenith then has to be 434 light years away. But you have diverging zeniths, not parallel zeniths like this. So your minutes of degree will never match the surface distance, because your minutes of degree will be tens of hundreds of whatever. It'll be tens of light years at that point. Every minute of degree will be like 50 light years or God knows what. Do you know what I mean? So this is the problem, right? This is the problem you have. Co-altitude, right? Your co-altitude gives you your zenith distance. Yeah, there's your zenith. Here's our zenith distance, 1,800 nautical mile radius. Why can they call this radius a zenith distance as well? Because it's your co-altitude distance gives you your zenith distance. You have your zenith angle, like it was shown in, where is it? Here's your zenith angle, right? And here's your altitude angle, your elevation angle, your depression angle, or zenith angle, right? You then take that angle and you multiply it by 60 to get your minutes of degree. So if that's 45 degrees of an elevation, you have 45 degrees of a depression angle or a zenith angle. Then 45 by 60 is 2,700. That gives you a co-altitude distance of 2,700 minutes of degree, right? Transformed into 2,700 nautical miles. So you know between the observer and the GP, right, and the observer's co-altitude and the zenith, and the observer's co-altitude and the celestial body, both of those are both 2,700 nautical miles. Both of them. You know that because you're using parallel zeniths. That's the only way you can know it. You can't know it any other way because the minutes of degree have to match the nautical miles. If your minutes of degree and nautical miles aren't aligning, then you can't do it. And they can't align with diverging zeniths, only with parallel zeniths. So I need someone on the opposing side, hopefully Petey, because he seems to be very arrogant, even though he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I need him or someone else to do diverging zeniths, right? To have a co-altitude, right, and a zenith distance that matches the surface of their globe with diverging zeniths. So that's what needs to happen, because this is Petey trying to do a burden of proof reversal. That's all he's trying to do. Now I have no hassle proving it. Easy to prove. I've given it all here, but Petey and other people like him, they just don't understand what I'm talking about. Everything they need is there, but they don't want to investigate it, because if they investigate it, they know then once they investigate it, they can't not look at the truth. They know that they're debunked, so they won't look at it. They just keep on asking, how do you do it? How do you do it? Like Sean Hawkins. We all know Sean Hawkins. How many times has he been debunked? Over and over and over and over. This one thing here completely debunks Sean Hawkins. There's one thing here and his Polaris challenge. But will he ever investigate any of these things? Will him or Petey or anyone else, will they ever actually address any of this? No. So they just want to waste our time. And unfortunately, this video may be a bit of a waste of time. But I'm making it because parallel zeniths are important, because they absolutely destroy the heliocentric model. So carrying on, I'm going to show what Petey did next. Right, where are we? Here. Sorry, this one. Right, go up to here. So Petey started building a straw man model because Petey says, Brian said it doesn't matter what height the star is, right? No, Brian said, right, that it doesn't matter what height the star is because the star only has, as Brian has said many, many times, only has an apparent height. And why is he saying that? Because Brian is working off of the information from celestial navigation. And celestial navigation do not claim a height to the star because the stars and sun and moon only have an apparent height, an angular height. That's all they have. Because what height is the star when it's at your 90? How do you know? You don't know what it is. It's just above your head. It seems to be far above your head. How far, you don't know. All you can do is take an angle to the celestial bodies. You can't determine how high they are because they have an apparent height that will change. As you move closer or further from Polaris, Polaris's apparent height will change. Right above the horizon, it'll change. The same if we're talking about a different star, Regal or one of these kind of ones, if that's coming towards you or moving away from you, then its apparent elevation will change. Right? But you don't know when it's at your 90, what height is it? What's its elevation at your 90? You have no idea. There's no way of finding out. You don't know. All you know is that they're up there. You can't get to them. You don't know what they are. That's it. So celestial navigation use those angles, right? And they figured out. They figured out. There's never a question that Petey had in his video. How did they know? How did they find out how they could match 1 nautical mile to 1 degree? Well, the nautical miles are based on degrees. Right, they were able to find out using elevation angles to Polaris that if they created because they had to work within the 60 system, so you have 60 minutes of degree, right, within 1 degree. So you needed to break that distance down into 60, right? That meant you couldn't use statute miles if they were around at the time or whatever was around stadia, whatever. You needed something that would break down into 60. So you broke that distance down into 60. You didn't deal with the solving of the internals of the triangle because that's for an angular size thing, right? That's for an angular size measurement. You dealt with you're dealing with, here you have the 54 degree depression angle, right? Zenith angle, right? Right? Depression angle, zenith angle, the same thing, right? So that's what you were looking for. You weren't dealing with the internals of the triangle. All you were interested in was getting, right, a 90, right, at your position and a 90 at the GP, right, so you can have an angle, right, a correct angle to the star, and that will give you then a zenith angle or a depression angle. And then the roof of that depression angle will be your zenith distance, your co-altitude distance, and then that will match the surface of the Earth. But they had to take that distance, right, and make it match. Like 60 degrees they had to take a distance and go, right, this is 60 degrees, right, or this is that distance broke up into 60, and they did it again and again and again, and that's how that all worked. Who first did it, and who got all this information together, I have no idea. I don't think celestial navigation know. Who knows where the almanac came from or how that information was all gathered. I don't think it was just gathered by men. It seems a bit. How long that would take to gather, I don't know. But I do know that they worked within a system of 60. So that's why 60 minutes of degree is 60 nautical miles. So they had to break up the distance into 60. So that's why they don't use statute miles, they use nautical miles. That's where the term nautical mile comes from, because they had to match the minutes of degree. So the minutes of degree, that 60 minutes of degree, right? 60 minutes making 1 degree had to match on the surface of the Earth. That's how it works. You can't have diverging zeniths because your minutes of degree won't match then, because you have wider at the top. Do you understand? Excuse me. It won't work. It only works with parallel zeniths. But anyway, back to Petey's claims. So Petey is shown here where he's showing a 36 degree angle to Polaris. He puts Polaris at any height here because he says that I say that it doesn't matter what height Polaris is at. No, it doesn't, because, as I said, it's an apparent height, right? It'll change. If the star moves or you move, the angle will change. So the apparent height will change. So he has a 54 degree depression angle, 36 degree elevation angle, and the distance is 3,240, right? So that would be so 54. 1 second now. So just make sure that so 54 multiplied by 60 equals 3240, right? So 3240. So that is right. So his angle to this Polaris thing here, right, is 324 is 36, which will give him 54 degree depression angle, giving him 3240 of a distance, right? Grand. But then he starts moving on to this nonsense. He put a 45 degree angle over the other side, right? Not understanding why this is not correct, right? They don't do this. They take one angle to one star, then they mirror that to the other side. So he's showing here that the 45 degree angle here, right, only has a distance of 2354 when it should be 2700. It's 2354 instead of 2700, which would be out here. So you say, see, it doesn't work. The angle doesn't work with the other side. No, you're missing the point, right? The person who'd be taking a 45 degree angle, right, here, right, the person who's taking a 45 degree angle to a celestial body, right, they're going to be using the depression angle, right, which will be 2700, right, which will be 45 by 2700, which will give them a 2,700 mile distance, right? They don't do this. They don't put another different ship at their side taking an angle to the same star, because what will happen is that star to this person here will appear higher. It will appear higher because the angle is tighter. Do you understand? It's not going to work like he's showing here. They don't do that. They don't ever do that. What they do is, right, here you have ships at different distances. The angles change even if the elevation of the star stays the same. I don't know what height the star is, right? But the angle changes, right? The further away you go. So the thing about what Petey's trying to do here is that is what he's forgetting about is that they don't do this. This 36 degree angle here, this is mirrored at the other side, and that's the radius here, that becomes a diameter, which becomes a circle of equal altitude, right? So your circle of equal altitude, where are we here? Right, there you go, circle of equal altitude. You don't put a different angle at the other side, that becomes your circle of equal altitude. The whole point is that you're here, that's the star, right? Let's just say whatever height is at. Right, that's your angle to the star. That's all you have. You don't know the height of the star, and then that's your radius, which becomes a diameter by doubling it. Then you have a circle of equal altitude or equal angle, right? Just a circle of equal altitude inscribed about a pole. So a circle of equal altitude or equal angle. Anywhere on that circle, the angle to the top of this pole will be equal to everywhere else. It'll always be 60 degrees. All these were 60 degrees, and it'll always be a 30 degree depression angle. For each one of those you put on, it will be a 30 degree depression angle, right? And there is your co-altitude position up here. So this is the zenith, or this is the celestial body. This is your co-altitude. So this here is the roof of your depression angle. That's what that is, right? The roof of your depression angle, which gives you your minutes of degree, which will be your zenith distance, your co-altitude distance, which will give you your zenith distance or radius on the surface of the Earth. That's how it works. You don't have a different angle on the other side. Nobody does that. Because this shows that Petey has not looked into celestial navigation enough, because he doesn't understand nobody does this. We are working off of celestial navigation. No one does this. He's shown there's a 45 degree angle here, but it doesn't work because it's shown 2,354 degrees. Yeah, if he wants to take a 45 degree angle to something that has the same apparent height, but if you're taking an angle what he's doing is stupid, because the point is that the angle gives you your distance, right? What he's saying here is celestial navigation doesn't work. That's literally what he's trying to say here, because he doesn't understand. You don't do this. He doesn't understand how this is not done by celestial navigation ever. They don't put a different angle at the other side. And to the person over here, this Polaris thing here, or star, will have a different apparent altitude because they're at a different position in relation to it. So the apparent altitude will be different. So if you have a 45 degree angle here, right, your depression angle, it's always going, and that's your 45 degree angle to the star. Whereas he started with the star instead of starting with the angle. And this is the problem. He's starting with the star at a particular height, right, held at the same height, where you won't get the same distance along the baseline if the apparent height stays equal. Because for a person here to get a 45 degree angle, it's not going to be the apparent height they see. the star at is not going to match. So I don't know it's just nonsense what he's doing here. It's just complete nonsense. But he shows here how when he moves this out to 2700 here, out from the GP 2700, how he only has a 41 degree angle, right? But what he's forgetting about is this is your initial angle, the 36 degree angle. That's what you start with. You don't do this here, right? You don't do this. This is a separate angle to a separate star. So you start with one angle here, your 36 degree angle, right? And then that becomes your radius of your circle of equal altitude. You double that and that becomes your diameter. And you create your circle of equal altitude. You don't try and put another angle at the other side. It doesn't work. So just to show, right, here you have three different circles of equal altitude, three different angles to three different stars. You don't have this one at button up to the back of this one. They don't do that. It's three separate angles to three separate stars, and you're calculating off of the depression angle, right, for your distance. That's what you're doing. You're not doing what Petey's doing, because if the star stays in the same apparent height, then and doesn't change its apparent height, which it does in reality. So, but in Petey's diagram, it doesn't change its apparent height. So consequently, then your depression angle distance won't match it. You'll have 2,700. You'll have 2,700. You'll have minutes of degree, but they won't be matching nautical miles along the surface of the Earth, because you already have, with that apparent height, you already have a 36 degree angle that matches that. That's where you work off of that. Then you might take an angle to a different star, but you don't do what he's doing over here. This is just nonsense. Nobody does this. Right, so he moved this out to 2,700 from the GP, and he shows how the angles don't work. It's like, Petey, you don't do that. There is no apparent change to this, or in your diagram. In your diagram, in reality, there is an apparent altitude change, and that apparent altitude change gives you the distance. You don't get that. That's why this one is correct, but this one's not going to be correct if it holds the same apparent altitude. So on to the next one. He then corrects this for 27. Right, corrects this to he corrects this by changing the height of the star. So there you go. He had to change the apparent. Change the apparent altitude, right, of the star, right, above the surface of Earth, to correct this and make this 45 degrees and 2,700 nautical miles away from the GP. But then it disrupts the one at the other side. That's why they don't do this. They're not looking for two separate angles. They're looking for to the same star. They're looking for one angle to that star, and then to make a radius, which is a straight horizontal line, right, and then double that for a diameter, which is double that straight horizontal line, and then create a circle, which is a 2D flat surface, a circle of equal angle or equal altitude. That's what they do. They don't do this. If you have a different angle at the other side, it's going to, of course, mess up. With the same apparent height, that doesn't happen. The height would be different for the person here than the person here. So you can't hold a 36 degree angle, right, with the same apparent height, and a 45 degree angle with the same apparent height, and expect the distances to be correct on both sides. They won't. They'll only be correct on the first side that you take the angle to. Right? If you want to create, like, if he has a 45 degree angle here to this star, right, and he wants to have a 36 degree angle to it, then he has to move till he gets a 36 degree angle to it. That's not how it works. You don't try looking for the angle that you want. You just take what angle you get, and then you work off of that. You don't try, if you want to get a 36 degree angle on the other side, then you have to move to where you'll get a 36 degree angle. But who cares about that? Why would you be doing that? Because your distances aren't going to match that way. The distances are only going to match on one side of that. It only matches in one way, right? That's why you take only one angle to one star. You don't go messing around with different angles at the other side. Nobody does that. And in his video, he said that how come flat earthers never show do this and show angles at either side? Because celestial navigation don't do it. Because it doesn't work. You won't get your distances correct. It doesn't work because the apparent height of the star will only be right for one of the observers. So you can't take a 45 degree angle to this, and you can't take a 36 degree angle to it. But But whichever angle you take, once you take your initial angle, that is what the star is. To make a 36-degree angle off of this, you have to come in closer to make or further or whatever. You have to then manufacture the angle, right? They're not manufacturing angles. The angle they take is the angle. They're not trying to manufacture an angle. They just take the angle, and they know, due to the apparent height, they know that the angle is the angle is going off of their apparent height above the horizon. The celestial body's apparent height above the horizon, right? That gives them the correct distance. But it doesn't work if you try and put a different angle at the other side. That's not going to be a circle of equal altitude, a circle of equal angle. That is not going to work. The distances will only be right on the initial angle. Because if somebody on the other side is looking at this, they're not going to see it. At the same apparent height. Because if they are further away or closer to the same star, they're going to see it at a different apparent height. So their angle then will be to it then will be correct for their distance. But it won't be if you try to do the two angles to the same star and try and use the two angles opposite from each other. That doesn't work. Nobody does this. This is not celestial navigation. I don't know how to explain this better. It is crazy. Here we have, right, he's put a 45-degree angle here with 2,700 nautical miles from the GP. And he has another one out here at 2,700 nautical miles from the GP. Right, so I put in a blue line here because this is correct. 45 degrees up, 45 degrees down. There you have a diameter. Now you have a circle of equal angle, if you want. All these things. You have a radius, a diameter, circle of equal angle. You have all these things that you need, right? But what you don't have, right, is see this angle here. This is not this angle here. The apparent height is not going to stay as it is, and this is his problem. This will only work for the 45 degree, right? This will only work for that angle because that's his initial angle here. He changed it to fit the 45 degree, so it'll only work for 45 degrees. Right, when the apparent height of the star changes, then the distance will change. He doesn't understand that. Just because I relayed what celestial navigation say and say that the height of the star doesn't matter, it doesn't matter because you're using parallel zeniths, number one, and number two, the apparent height is only ever apparent, and that apparent height will change with distance. Do you know what I mean? It's just. If these people would just learn about celestial navigation, they wouldn't be coming up with these stupid videos. So next on, he said, so this is not important. I already went in. He was saying that we don't ever address. Yeah, I will say it. We don't ever address the other side of we just we talk about an angle and we never address the other side, or the angle on the other side of the zenith from the GP. This is kind of basically what he was saying. After supposedly watching my video with this. Here, I'll just show. He has there's a little diagram here from my video. This is the diagram in my video, and he states that we don't ever talk about the other side. Well, right, what's this then? That was in my other video. So he's saying we never talk about the angle at the other side. There's two reasons we don't really talk about that. Number one is it's not necessary to talk about most of the time. Secondly, the angle at the other side has to be the same angle as the angle that you take, because you're creating a circle of equal angle, equal altitude. That's why we don't put a different angle, try and make a different angle on the other side. It only works with your first initial angle. Then the distances only work with that. Then you take a separate angle to a different star, and that distance works, and another angle to a third star, or fourth if you want, and that distance works. Then distances work. But you can't put another angle at the other side. We don't do that, because celestial navigation don't do it. We're not going to go doing what celestial navigation don't do. What would be the point? Then we'd be doing what you're doing, Petey, and what Globers do, which is a lot of stuff that's not celestial navigation. So I don't know what's going on with you, but you obviously are. You obviously don't learn. This guy has not learned about celestial navigation. He's made different claims, but he keeps on being corrected, and he keeps on not learning. Like, unfortunately, the rest of our opposition, you know. So I don't know where to go with this guy, because he's not dealing with celestial navigation. He doesn't seem to understand the difference between here is an angular size measurement, right? He doesn't understand the difference, like most of the rest of our opposition, the difference between an angular size measurement and an elevation angle. if I know the height, the exact height of the Eiffel Tower, and I take an angle to the Eiffel Tower, I can then determine my exact distance from the Eiffel Tower based on the angle I take, because I know the actual height. If I don't know the actual height of the Eiffel Tower, but I know my exact distance from the Eiffel Tower, my exact distance, I can then, with my angle, determine the height of the Eiffel Tower, because I have the distance. So you have to have the size to know the distance, or the distance to know the size, right? That's how it works. Surveyors use it all the time, or they used to anyway. They still do. They just don't need to do as many calculations, but that's how it works. But this is not an elevation angle. Your angle, right, to the top, right, is your elevation angle, right? When you're talking about celestial navigation, your angle up to celestial body is your elevation angle, right? It requires a flat baseline, and the opposite side of that triangle will be the zenith from the GP. But you're calculating for your, as Petey had earlier, your zenith. Where are we? Yeah, your zenith angle, right? Because that's what's going to give you your distance, your zenith angle. That's what gives you your distance. You don't know what height this is, so you don't know what distance you are from the GP. So you don't know what's the height of the celestial body, and you don't know what distance you are from the GP of the celestial body. So that's why you calculate for your depression angle, your zenith angle, which gives you a zenith distance, your co-altitude distance, which then gives you your surface distance to the GP. You never find out the height of the celestial body. You just find out where the distance to the GP, and you find out then from the almanac where the GP is, blah, blah, blah. But that's what you do. The height of this, you don't know. So there's no angular size. There's no internal. You're not correcting for. You're not trying to solve for the internals of a triangle. You're not doing any of that nonsense. It's only the external depression angle is on the roof of the external depression angle, as I show here. That's the roof. That's all you're solving for. That's it. Now, I'm just going to show something here, right? Here we have a 26 degree, right? I'm going to move in a bit, right? 26 degrees, right? I'll pull this down, right? This angle here is 26.56 degrees, right? This is the observer. This is the observer's zenith from the observer. This is the co-altitude to the star, and this is the GP. Very simple, right? If the observer, right, moves closer to the star, let's say as Polaris, then the angle goes up. It's now 63 degrees. Moving close, really close. It's 86 degrees there now, right? And when they move back to that point, back to 26 degrees. And adversely, we move the GP, you just move this out here. And we move the star, right? When the star holds the same exact altitude, but moves a distance, it changes the angle. So now we have 17 degrees. So 17.10 degrees. So let's take this a second. Right? So 90 minus 17.10 equals 72.9. So you now have a zenith, right? Zenith angle. This is your zenith angle here from the observer zenith, right? Between the observer zenith and the elevation angle, your zenith angle or your depression angle, right? And that's what you have. But that's not your measurement yet, right? You must now multiply 72.9 by 60. So now we will multiply, right, by 60 equals 4,374. So now you know that you have 4,374 minutes of degree, right, across the sky, right? And you know that matches, right, because you're using parallel zeniths, that matches 4,374, right, nautical miles along the surface of the Earth. That's how it works. So you know that you have 4,374, right, nautical miles along the sky miles, right, along the sky. That's what you have. Minutes of degree are just sky miles, right? That's all they are, minutes of degree. And on the surface, you know that you have a zenith distance of 4,374. Zenith distance, the distance between the zeniths. And you need to have a co-altitude to know that distance. Because your co-altitude, which is the altitude of the zenith observer, of the observer zenith, has to match the altitude of the star. Doesn't matter what height the star is when you're dealing with parallel zeniths, because it doesn't matter. The height of the star doesn't matter because the zeniths are always parallel. So you don't know, it's only an apparent height, you don't know what height it actually is. All you know is that your angle to that right now gives you an angle of 17.10 degrees, which will be zenith distance, right? Your zenith angle was 70 whatever it was degrees, and that gives you a zenith distance, a co-altitude distance of 4,374 minutes of degree, which becomes 4,374 nautical miles of a radius or a zenith distance. That's how it works. This is how this happens. Not right. It can only work with parallel zeniths. But this is the thing, right? I show now. Right, I'll come out a bit. Right. Now, I'm going to move this GP on here. And I'm going to move the star. Right. Now, what's the angle? 2.48 degrees. So the observer didn't move, right? The star moved, right? But the star kept the same altitude. So the star, but to the observer, the altitude of the star has changed. As far as the observer is concerned, because their angle to the star is becoming more shallow and becoming more horizontal. So if I just make it a bit bigger, right, and I bring the GP out to here, right, and I bring the star out to here, right. I'm just going to zoom in and put it down to there. Let's see, no. There we go, right. Now let's see what we have as an angle, right. Our angle is 1.14 degrees. So the observer, right, even though the star is at the same exact altitude above a horizontal plane, right, the observer sees it as 1.14 degrees. That's the observer's angle to the star. Right now, obviously, you're not going to see it with refraction and with all the rest of it is no good. In reality, you won't be able to use the star when it's that close to the horizon. But the point is that the star's distance, right, or elevation above the GP never changed. The star is still the exact altitude above the GP. That didn't change. But what did change is its distance from the observer, right? Now, if I bring in the observer, right, let's just get the observer. Oh, right. Sorry, I have to go in there now. It's just right. If I take the observer and I start bringing the observer closer, the angle goes up. But the elevation didn't change. All it changed was the distance of the observer to the star and the distance of the star to the observer. So now the elevation is going up, or sorry, the angle is increasing. Why is the angle increasing? Because the observer is getting closer and closer and closer. So now the observer is at 53 degrees to the star, right? But the observers didn't change. The observer stayed along a horizontal baseline. The star's elevation above the GP didn't change. That stays on a horizontal baseline. So it's two parallel lines, the star and the observer, but yet the angle changes, and the distance then changes with the angle. That's all it is. You calculate the distance to the GP using the angle, and all that's changing is either the observer's position with Polaris, because Polaris stays stationary, or one of the other stars or a sun or whatever, and that changes its position in relation to the observer. And that's all that's happening. That's all that's happening. And you don't need any globe. There's no diverging zeniths. None of that works. Right? You have parallel zeniths, and that's what does this for you. So let's go and bring this back. Right? Bring this back to here, just to make it right again. Now, back at 1.14 degrees. So the observer couldn't barely see the star. The star would be on the observer's horizon. But yet the star is still the same altitude above the surface of Earth. This is so simple. I don't see how people can't understand this. You know, it's just two parallel lines. It's optical drop. An optical drop. That's all it is. You know what I mean? I've shown this so many times. The optical drop. I've shown real world examples, everything. This is a brilliant real world example, you know, in the real world, how it happens. No, but our opposition seem to not be unwilling to learn about this, you know, because it kills their model. But now on to the last part, because this is dragged on way too long. So the last part is this. right? Now, this is a problem Petey has, right? And all the rest of the globe model, right? This here, right? This is the zenith, right? At someone who's at 20, right, who's on a globe and they have diverging zeniths. This here, this zenith is from the observer here at this green dot, and they have a 27-degree angle to Polaris. Now, what you notice is that this angle line is going straight up. Now, Petey didn't know this until I showed it in my videos. This is his claim, and I had to correct him on his own globe model. I know his globe model better than him. That's how sad it is. And yet he thinks he can correct me and other people. He doesn't even know his own model, right? And he's trying to correct other people. So he's trying to show here, is trying to prove how the distance along the surface of a globe matches the 60 nautical miles per degree. No. Mathematically, it matches along the surface, right? After flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris are then back engineered into the center of a circle, right? They found out the size the circle needed to be due to the distances from the GP of Polaris. That's how they did it, right? And it was easy then to just mathematically make a circle and then just made a globe after that, right? But see these angles here? No one ever took those angles. Nobody ever will. Nobody ever did, right? All this, no one experiences any of this. Flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, right? And the thing about it is that his elevation angles here are supposed to be going to Polaris, right? He has this angle line going straight up in the air, just like it is parallel to the GP of Polaris, the zenith up to the GP. So how can you have a zenith distance, right? Let's just click that. How is his zenith distance? So according to him, that's his zenith distance, right? But it's not. That's not his zenith, that's his angle. The zenith distance is from his zenith to the zenith of Polaris, right? So that's his angle line. That should be meeting up with this, but it doesn't. It's always parallel. It never meets up with it. So this is not his zenith distance because that's not a zenith. That's an angle. So that's the observer, his zenith to his angle line. That has nothing to do with anything, right? And even at that, look at that. Look at the distance, right, between his observer zenith and his angle line. Look at the difference compared to the distance down here. It's never going to match. But it doesn't matter because that's not what the claim is. That's not what celestial navigation do. This is what celestial navigation do. Zenith to zenith. Co-altitude. Zenith distance. Co-altitude. Where are we? Where is it gone to? Co-altitude. Right? How is this working? Co-altitude. How does this work with this? It doesn't. Polaris is 434 light years away. Light years don't exist, and neither does any measurement of the speed of light. That's immaterial right now. But in their model, in your model, Petey, it's 434 light years away. Right? That means your observer zenith, right, which is diverging from a center point, by the way, must be 434 light years away. That means your minutes of degree are tens of light years. Because the distance between the two, your zenith distance, your co-altitude distance between your zenith and the zenith of from the GP to Polaris in your model is hundreds of miles, hundreds and hundreds, sorry, of light mile or hundreds of light years in distance. So that's why 60 nautical miles per degree does not work on a globe, right? And the proof of that is celestial navigation. Because your zenith's distance and your zeniths will never work. They don't work. You'll have hundreds of light years of a zenith distance, right? You might have a 45-degree angle or 27-degree angle, whatever it is. Let's just say you use the 45-degree angle there. That's never going to, that's that 45-degree angle. So that will be a 2,700 minutes of degree. But that 2,700 minutes of degree will be spanning across a distance of hundreds of light years in your model. How is that ever going to match the surface? It won't. It will never match the surface. Ever. This is as wrong, this model here and what Petey is claiming is as wrong can be. Right? I've showed it and showed it and showed it. The zenith distance is between the zeniths. You have to have a co-altitude distance to create the zenith distance. The zenith angle gives you the angle. That's only an angle. Then you calculate the distance by multiplying the angle by 60. That is not a distance, that's just an angle. Also known as the depression angle. The roof of the depression angle or the roof of the zenith angle is your coaltitude zenith distance. This can't work with diverging zeniths. I need someone to actually show how it works with diverging zeniths. And you must add in coaltitude, because that is what happens in celestial navigation. That is the end of that. There's no way around this. You will never be ever get around this. I couldn't be more confident. You will never get around it, because it's impossible to get around. You will never ever beat celestial navigation. It debunks that the world is a globe. Totally and utterly. There's no way around it. There's no way back. Diverging zeniths do not work. Only parallel zeniths work. Right? You don't have 60 nautical miles per degree with diverging zeniths. You have hundreds of light years of a zenith distance. Right? 2,700 minutes of degree broken up. Right? So if you take 100, let's say you take 800 light years and break it up into 2,700 parts. Right? Each one of those is a minute of degree. How many light years is each one of those minutes of degree corresponding to? Because those minutes of degree certainly are not corresponding to a 2,700 nautical mile distance on the Earth anymore. We can't. They can't correspond to it. I don't know. This is after going on an hour. I'm not interested in any more responses to this guy Petey. I'll put his video in the description. If anyone gets through this hour-long video, fair dues to you. And I'll put the video he was doing a response to. I'll put that in there as well. You know, I don't know what to make out of these people. They just seem to just not know what the hell they're talking about every day of their lives. Thanks.